Good morning. This is Dr. Wright, and we are in the recovery room. Y'all, this is so exciting. God is so wonderful. I am bursting at the listen. Get your Bible. We are going to First Samuel 30, verse 10. First Samuel 30, verse 10. Get your word. You all, I am screaming. God is so wonderful. Listen, this time is so pivotal. This time is so key. It has never been a time in my personal life and my personal walk that I have known how important it is to hear God and know what He is saying for you in this season. The word is replete with instruction and clarification and revelation for each of us individually. He has set up system in place for us, his children, for you, for me, for us to succeed and recover all. Even if it's a place of pursuit without obstacle, then his plan is for you to have great success. If it is pursuit after detours and curves and turns and ups and downs, then it is that you have what he has predestined for you to have. This is such an exciting and pivotal time. Get your word. We are looking at First Samuel 30. And if you have been following with us, we've had a few other times we've looked at different parts of this particular story. It is a story that is well known, but don't you know that God is unsearchable? He's undefinable. There is no end to what He will show and share, that He will illuminate and reveal to us, that we can be confident not only in him, but in where we are and what we are to do in that moment. In First Samuel 30, we are going to stop at 10, but we are going to start at 8 for context. Of course, you all know we have been talking about this story where David and his men had returned to Ziklag to rest. There's been a lot of he had just had many battles, of one of which in the 17th chapter, with Goliath, who had been terrorizing the soldiers of God's army, and he defeated him. But that just created a cascade of events that lead us to First Samuel chapter 30, where he and his men are returning to their home to Ziklag to rest because of all of the battles and fights, and people had been pursuing him to kill him, and we'll look into that in a study at another time. But we arrive at chapter 30, where he is coming home believing that he would have time to rest, only to find that all the women and the children, for him and his battle friends, his battle colleagues, the other warriors that are doing battle with him, they come home. Their families have been taken captives. Their homes have been burned. And then in the agony and anguish of this sequence of events, the other soldiers begin to turn on David. They say, well, since this has happened to us, then we're going to stone you. My goodness. And so we look in 7, where David goes to pray. And then in verse 8, where we are going to start, it says that David inquired of the Lord. And that is simply, as we had talked about, David beginning to pray from a place of absolute distress. And he's asked in his prayer time. See, We're not going to, let's stay focused. And so he asked in his prayer time, he said, shall I pursue this troop and shall I overtake them? And then we have in verse 8, what we understand prayer is not only us asking, but listening for the voice of the true and living God. And in the Old Testament version of this kingdom principle, it says that the Lord answered him. He said, pursue, for you shall surely overtake them and without fail recover all. And so then we're in verse 9 where it says, so David went, listen carefully, people of God. It says, so David went, he and the 600 men with him came to the brook Besor. There those remained who were left behind. It says, so David went. And in a previous session, we talked about how important it is to launch into execution at the voice of God. That is the place where we are acting in faith. That is the place where we are not looking at resources. We are not looking at anything but what we heard God say. We understand that we are God's people and that we live at his instruction. He said, pursue and you shall surely recover all. And the next verse says, so David went. But listen to this, people of God, and this is what we will meditate on and then make our supplications from. In verse 9, it says, so David went, he and the 600 men with him, and came to the brook Besor. There those remained who were left behind. And you all, I'm telling you, I've read this more than 100 times. This is the first time I've seen this. In verse 10, it says, but David pursued. So something, it made me go back and say, well, he already said in verse 9, David went. He and the 600 men with him came to the brook Besor. Then he goes right in the next verse and says, but David pursued. I never saw this way. So in verse 9, it says, so David went. He and the 600 men with him came to the brook Besor. Okay. In verse 10, he says, but David pursued, he and the 400 men, for 200 stayed behind. My goodness. What we will talk about today before we make our supplications, that this level of obedience, this determination to follow through on what God had responded, this shows us in black and white that David's pursuit, David's went, David's launch into action, David's movements by faith were not hindered, no matter how tired he was, no matter how frustrated he was, and no matter how the people that left with him and couldn't continue with him could have deterred him, but it didn't. Because from verse 9, he left with 600 men. The reason why the Bible goes back and says but David pursued is because 200 of them were too tired to continue. My goodness. People of God, this is just for those that are hearing God tell you do it. Go, believe it, trust. You are moving in what God has told you to do. You are at a pivotal place in your kingdom journey. This is about those that have a specific instruction. We asked God a specific question and he gave a specific answer. And out of faith, there has been movement. Out of faith, there has been change. There has been transformation. You are the ones, the people that this is for are the people that let the word of the Lord change them in that moment. You were tired, you were discouraged, but out of obedience and humility. You have prayed, sir. You have prayed, ma'am, and you heard God say, pursue. And the very next thing you did, you got up and went after it. You took the 600 that were willing to go with you and you went after it. You took the resources, you took the skill set, you took the understanding, you took the truth, you took the word, you took what God told you, and you went after it. And the very next verse, there was some other reason that could tempt you to back up. You're left with 600, and in the very next step, there were some that could not go. Something that would look like it was a disappointment. It could have been perceived as a setback. But even in that verse, even in that moment, and if this is for you, this is that moment. Even if there has been some discouragement, some setback, something unexpected, after your immediate obedience to what God has said, still pursue. This is for those that God is saying, don't let anything distract you. If people fall off, if they join you, don't be distracted. If they're celebrating you or saying you've got to be crazy, don't be distracted. Pursue, continue after what God has said, continue to believe, to continue to develop, continue to read, continue to make, continue to produce, continue to pray, continue to intercede, continue to hold on. Don't let anything distract you in this season. That is the point of reflection. Don't be distracted, even no matter what others do, no matter what others, if others fall exhausted, you pursue. If others have stopped believing, you pursue. If others have begun to do things outside of the directives of the Lord, you pursue. This is a call to action like never before for those that have been in a place. My goodness, right before verse 10, David in verse 7 said he needed encouragement. He needed strength. Right before in verse 4, he had been crying, it said, until he didn't even have any more strength to cry. This is a word of the Lord that is rejuvenating. My goodness, this word, this what you have, listen, this pursue, this response from God, pursue, and you shall surely overtake. So David went, verse 9, verse 10, but David pursued. Do you realize that the